everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we are always going on and on about all of the benefits of being a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. And I feel like we've done that a lot, and I'm just going to briefly remind you, just please don't skip forward. I promise this is going to pay off in a second. I'm going to remind you that we do have our annual subscription sale going on right now, so you can get access to the site for a full year for just under $70. Pretty good deal. All right, so I was perusing our board, and there was a thread about old computer video games. I thought, oh, well, this is my jam. I can talk about 1980s computer games, 1990s computer games. And I open the thread, and I'm reading through it. And what do I see? So sometimes, you know how threads on message boards sometimes go in unexpected directions. Yada, yada, yada. A picture of Tony Gerdeman on his Little League team with his whole Little League team, like the team picture. Looks like it was taken off of a microfilm or a microfiche from a library, not the original newspaper clipping. But there he is in all of his, 10, 11-year-old glory with his stirrups and his pinstriped Little League uniform pants, and one of the most motley crews of baseball players ever assembled. I don't want to say, Tony, entire year's subscription worth it just to see that picture, but I'm also not saying that.
Very, very good sell job there, Tom. Yes, that was the Millennial Little League. I don't know what year that would and how old I was, like you said, 9 or 10, something like that. So mid-'80s and, picture day in all our glory. I think that was probably the year before we started to do baseball cards, which was like legit now. Like you could take this, you could trade it in. Am I in Beckett yet? No, not quite, but one day. So yes, and that was from the Northwest Signal, the great Napoleon, Ohio newspaper, and not like ripped from daguerreotype or something like that. But yes, I think I got that sent to me from somebody in Napoleon, and was like, hey, just going through the stacks here, and wanted to send this to you. So that was a boon a few years ago, and I think about it every day.
I looked at the coaches on the team, and I thought, boy, I feel like I can fill in the entire backstory of these guys' lives just based on the fact that one of them is wearing a white tank top in the picture, and the other one is named shares a name with a famous wrestler. Looks just enough like the famous wrestler that I'm like, no, he's not big enough. No, it can't actually be. I feel like if Tony had his Little League team coached by a future professional wrestling superstar, he probably would have mentioned it. Probably would have come up on the show at some point before now.
Yeah, certainly would have. No, our coach there, Tony, the coach would at practice would make us run around the diamond, and that's when he would have a smoke break. And so he'd be smoking cigarettes, and we'd get back around to home plate, and he'd be like, "Are you guys tired yet?" And we'd be like, "Yes, of course we're tired. We don't want to run anymore." Okay, go back around. It would be like 3 or 4 times before we figured out. If we say, no, we're not tired, then he would say, okay, let's get to practice. And plus, he's probably like running out of cigarettes. He's like, we need to get this going. We need to start practicing. And I think as I've told you before, like this is right around when Little League would start for us. Like maybe the last day of school would be like the first Little League practice, and we will eventually get to the show. But that first Little League practice was like, oh, we're so excited for it. We got our mitts and everything, we got our bats. And then it's like, all right, let's pick the rocks out of the diamond. It's like, there's so many rocks. Can't we just slide around them? It's all rocks. Look at it. All rocks.
Why did someone take an entire dump truck full of gravel and put it on our infield? I think your coach was maybe upset and made you run because he forgot that if he had a tank top on, he could not roll his smokes up in the sleeve of his t-shirt, which was, I'm sure, that would have been my guess as to his move during practice. You got the smokes rolled up in the t-shirt, but no sleeves, no roll up. That's probably why he was so angry and made you run so much.
Well, I think he either probably had him down in his overalls that were down there, or perhaps in the strap of the tank top. I mean, I don't know how they did it back then, but they managed. Everybody seemed to manage back then because everybody smoked, and of course, everybody wore tank tops and overalls. as far as I can recall. I don't know how the city folk did it, but we in the villages, that's how we did it. Tom, can we please move on?
Now that we've done 5 minutes on Tony's Little League team, I guess we can talk about the actual subject of today's show.
Yeah, the subject of today's show is an interesting one. This was Tom's idea. Just going to throw that out there in case it's terrible. We all know to blame Tom. Tom decided, hey, this is the most anticipated college football season in history, basically, and not just because everybody's excited to see Ohio State, but because of all of the changes going on, playoffs, the fantastic drama from the NIL, stuff like that. So let's go ahead and not all of these changes are good, by the way, as we may find out. So let's go ahead and just have a draft of the new college football landscape, the changes going on. Am I explaining this correct, Tom?
Yeah, we have a list of, I think we have 11 because we do things really well and came up with a 2-person draft where we have an odd number of subjects, but that's okay. We'll move on. Came up with 11 things that are new and different this year. And just, what are we most excited about? That's going to be number one. What are we least excited about? Well, that's going to be left on the board at the end of the draft. So we'll just go through, and I'll run through the list real quickly. And some of these are a little bit broad, and you may feel like some of these are a little overlapping. That's fine. Tony put the list together. So if you don't like it, blame him. Number 1, the 2-minute warning. Number 2, the 12-team playoff. Number 3, home playoff games. Number 4, old college football players in new places. Old college football teams in new places. Old college football coaches in new places. In-helmet communications. No SEC games on CBS. Nick Saban on game day. EA Sports is back. And finally, Big Ten schedule changes, meaning no divisions and different protected rivals, or in some cases, no protected rivals. So that's those are our contestants.
Wow, I'm glad to know that now. I didn't quite understand that portion of it in terms of we were limited to those. I thought, hey, let's just throw some ideas out there because I would like to go first, and my first pick is not on there.
Oh, well then, okay, good news. You can go first, and now we have an even number. Go ahead.
There you go. My thing that I'm most looking forward to this season and beyond is players suing coaches for breaching NIL contracts. This to me is an amazing development. Of course, Jaden Rashada, the now Georgia coach, suing Florida head coach Billy Napier for backing out on or failing to live up to a $13 million NIL contract, which is just tremendous because now we're going to get all of the dirt's going to be thrown out there. A lawsuit based on, losing out on the Miami money. And then John Ruiz from Miami saying, oh, well, that's an outrageous number. We never said anything like that. So this is just a start. And I am looking forward to more of these because this is the kind of drama that can sustain a podcast for a long time.
As someone who does a daily morning show throughout, both the busy times of year and the less busy times of year, you'll be able to hear more about that on the Wednesday episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning. But yeah, it is it's going to be one of those things that leads to finding out about a whole bunch of stuff. And I do wonder how many of these suits get settled because people aren't big on having discovery in trials like this, where it's like, oh, well, now all of these records are all going to be subject to discovery, and then it all gets put out into the universe, and a lot of times it's stuff people don't want out there. So I'm going to be very interested to see how this plays out. I do think the most likely fallout from this is Billy Napier, who Florida is desperately looking for a reason to fire, now has probably, if things play out the way they are purported to be playing out, they may have cause to fire Billy Napier, and he may get a big fat zero in terms of a buyout for getting fired for reasons that, I doubt anyone at Florida had a real big issue with this when it was happening, but now, well, hey, it's a convenient reason to not have Billy Napier be your football coach anymore. So, yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good guess as to where this is headed, but we will see. We will follow all of that for you. Okay, so, well, you definitely took one of the more exciting things that is happening this year, and that's certainly something to look forward to. I, Tony, am going a slightly different direction. My number one pick, unquestionably the thing I am most excited about, home playoff games. Cannot wait. I think that's going to be, we'll get to the 12-team playoff, and there are pluses and minuses, and the biggest plus on this is home playoff games. Let's see Alabama have to go up to State College, Pennsylvania in December. Let's see Tennessee have to go up to Wisconsin. I mean, let's see Miami have to go to Wisconsin. Can we set it up so Miami has to go to Wisconsin? I could not be more excited for anything than the idea of Miami, who just turns into a rock every time that the temperature dips below 50 degrees, to have to go up to Wisconsin when it's 20 degrees and windy. I cannot wait. You're going to get so many matchups that you haven't seen before, or that you haven't seen for a long time. Let's see, Let's see Oklahoma have to go play at Clemson. Let's see Michigan have to go play at Florida State. Whatever it is, there's a ton of matchups, a ton of teams that haven't played, and the on-campus element of this, the weather element of this, just I cannot wait for this. I could not be more excited about that.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, because we have an idea of what this is going to be like, but we've not gotten to see it before. We've seen games where it's essentially do or die, and the crowd is amazing, but this is do or die. Like there's no coming back from this. So it's going to be an atmosphere that could be some of the best we've ever seen at particular places. And I know I've mentioned here before that I have Nebraska going 10-2, which would put them into playoffs. And I'm imagining, like, one of the matchups I wrote down is Miami at Nebraska. Like, imagine that one. You might have to imagine it, honestly. But another one, Tom, how about this? LSU at Notre Dame.
Oh, man, Brian. And this is one of these times when, you know how the NCAA tournament selection committee will sort of get cute and pair a former coach with, a coach at his new place with his former team as like a second round matchup. I wonder if if everyone's pretty close together, if you might see a few storylines like that get set up. I do want to go back to the idea of Miami playing at Nebraska, because while that would be really fun, considering how many times Nebraska had to play Miami in the Orange Bowl in Miami's literal home stadium over the years, that involves both Miami and Nebraska having good, consistent, and positive seasons at the same time, Tony. What are the odds on that parlay hitting? Both Miami and Nebraska have good seasons that end well, and then they end up playing together. That feels like about a plus 30,000 to me.
That's all you had to say, Tom. I'm in. But in my defense, I do think Miami is going to make the playoffs, and because they've got talent, and it's a pretty simple schedule. What could possibly go wrong? Nebraska, Tom, tell me where the losses are. They start with UTEP, Colorado at home, Northern Iowa at home, Illinois at home, at Purdue, Rutgers at home, at Indiana, at Ohio State,
1,
UCLA at home, at USC,
2,
Wisconsin at home,
3,
at Iowa.
Yeah, I'm at 3 there, and probably it's Nebraska. There's going to be a close game that they will lose in the fourth quarter, so I'm going to say 8-4.
Fair.
Which will probably not get them in.
Probably not. And I also think, not to take the whole show up, but you know what? I'll just go take my next pick right now. We can just talk about that, because I am excited about the 12-team playoff. I think if you're not, then okay, boomer. Us young people will be excited about the progressive changes going on in college football. And as I'm looking at this, how many teams from what conferences, and here's my breakdown. Here's how it's going to happen. Here are your 12 teams, and this may be mathematically correct. 4 from the SEC, 3 from the Big Ten. You get one group of 5, so that's 8. I think you get 2 ACC, 1 Big 12, and is that it? Did I do all the math?
You're short 1.
Then I don't remember who it would be, because did I say 3 Big Ten? I should have.
You said 3 Big Ten, yes.
What is the other conference that we're missing? Big 12, ACC 2.
Not. The Pac-12 is not a thing anymore,
No.
so.
So maybe can the Big Ten get 4 in there? I don't. Based on my rankings, I think I only had 3 Big Ten teams winning at least 9 games, and it's going to take that 9th win to just maybe, possibly. Oh, Notre Dame was the other one. So
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying 4 SEC, 3 Big Ten, 2 ACC, 1 Big 12, 1 Group of 5, Notre Dame, and you try to find a 2 or a third ACC program in there. I don't know that they're going to beat each other up because nobody's really. I don't know that there are 3 good enough teams to withstand everybody, and I don't know which Big 12 team it's going to be. It may not be anybody if the Group of 5 is ranked ahead of them. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that kind of gets in with one of my issues with this, because I think the 12-team playoff, there are elements of it that are very exciting. See my first pick, home playoff games. I'm very excited for that. Some of the way this is set up is really stupid, that the top 4 seeds are all going to be conference champions. So the Big 12 champion, even if it's everyone in the Big 12 goes at best 10-2, 9-3, which is entirely possible because the Big 12 is made up of good teams but not great teams. There's really, without Texas and Oklahoma, I don't know that there is a team in there that I look at and go, that team is absolutely a national championship caliber team. That team can win 3 games against top level teams in a row. So you're going to have, last year was it last year, 2 years ago, Kansas State beat TCU, and so Kansas State would have had the one of the byes ahead of teams ranked. Kansas State, who was probably like 9th, 10th, 11th in the rankings at that point, would have had one of the byes. That's incredibly stupid. It is funny that Notre Dame can't ever get a bye. That is one good piece of that, because that's very funny. But I don't like that really at all. And I think people haven't completely gamed this out yet, where, if Ohio State and Oregon both go 11-1, or, one of them's 12-0 and one of them's 11-1, and then the other one finishes with, when one of them goes, they're both 12-1 after the Big Ten championship game. Whichever one wins the regular season loses the Big Ten championship game. That team is going to be 12-1, undefeated regular season, wins over a bunch of ranked teams, and is going to have to go play a first-round game at home and then play a second-round game. They would presumably be the 5th-ranked team, and then have to go to Kansas State or Oklahoma State to go play on the road against a 9-3 team in the second round. That sets you up pretty well to make the semifinals, but it's also kind of stupid. So, there was not a 100% perfect way to do this, but it feels like there's going to be some really stupid ways that this plays out over the next few years that I think people are going to get real annoyed at when they see it happening.
That's you, Tom.
Oh, it is me. There you go. Sorry.
Don't worry. I'll edit this. It'll be seamless, Tom. Don't worry.
I believe it. So I have a huge drop off after my first pick. Let's see. I'm going to go, and this is probably going to be a little bit surprising, but I think I'm going to go with the Big Ten schedule changes, where no more divisions, different protected rivals. I like this a lot. The Big Ten divisions were always kind of stupid. They set them up initially where it was legends and leaders, and I don't need to explain to you why that was stupid. And then it was East and West, and it was basically like varsity and junior varsity. And every year you went to Indianapolis, and it was like, oh, how is the West team going to lose this year? Terribly or worse than that? And then every year they lost terribly or worse than that. I'm really looking forward to, I guess the conference championship games on the whole are probably largely unnecessary at this point and probably should go away at some point. But before that happens, you're actually going to have really good, interesting conference championship games, which are going to be, how valuable are they? How much are they really going to mean? I don't know. How are teams going to treat these coming in? I don't know, because you've got a bunch of other games coming up after that. and you don't have that long layoff like you do normally. But I think those are, if it's Ohio State, Oregon Part 2, or if it's in the SEC and it's Georgia versus Texas, and it's not, oh, look, Georgia's playing, Alabama's playing Missouri because Missouri won the East, or Ohio State's playing Northwestern because Northwestern went 8-4 and won the West. I think that's going to be a pretty compelling weekend of TV. And, you at least you have the buys on the line, I guess. So that's something that you're playing for. I do wonder how much people are going to be leaving, holding guys out if they're kind of iffy. If you're kind of questionable, just sit that one out and get healthy for the playoff.
This kind of just goes into my next one, and we can continue the conversation, which is that losing those divisions and what would have happened if the rules had been implemented the past 3 seasons, which takes me to my pick of teams playing each other multiple times. And again, that's not on our list, but say Ohio State playing the same team multiple times, or playing multiple teams multiple times. You could have a scenario where Ohio State plays Oregon twice and Michigan twice, something like that. But basically, the last 3 years, if this rule was enacted, if there were no divisions, Ohio State and Michigan play twice, play in back-to-back weeks, each of those 3 years. And as I've said before, there are some detractors to that. I don't know how we're going to react yet. In terms of, I don't know what the reaction is going to be. I don't know how this will diminish or raise the stakes of the first game. Certainly raise the stakes of the second game. I know it has its detractors. I like watching Ohio State and Michigan play. So if I get to do it 2 or 3 times, that's not going to be the worst thing in the world. Or, Ohio State, I think the last time they played the same team twice in a year was Wisconsin in 2019. Obviously played them in the regular season, then again in the Big Ten championship game. But this is going to create some interesting matchups. But it also won't surprise me, Tom, if this ends up being like the Florida State-Miami ACC situation where it's like, finally, we're going to get Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten championship game, and then we don't see it for, however many years.
Yeah, Florida State and Miami set up their divisions. The reason that the divisions in the ACC are not just North and South or something intelligent like that, and the reason it's Atlantic and Coastal, or at least was Atlantic and Coastal, was that they wanted to set up the possibility of Florida State and Miami playing in the Conference Championship game so often, because those are 2 huge brands, and man, it is going to be great, and it's going to be so exciting to see those 2 teams play again, and then it never happened. So yeah, and Ohio State and Michigan were in the separate sides of the legends and leaders for the same reason, and that never happened. So yeah, we'll see how these new schedules play out, and how, the balance of the 2 divisions now being gone. That's going to change some of the difficulty of schedule for some of these teams, and some of the protected games going away is going to change some of that. So, we'll see how that all plays out. Michigan doesn't play Penn State this year, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be, an interesting kind of schedule change there. I think, to me, there's a difference between Ohio State and Michigan play back-to-back weeks, and Ohio State and Michigan play in the regular game, and then they also play in the playoff a month and a half later. I think that would be much more compelling than back-to-back weeks. Back-to-back weeks is like, I just saw this one. Jason Hervey and Back to the Future. What's a rerun? Like, that isn't that compelling to me. I think it's like, if they play Ohio State and Oregon, and they play in early to mid October this year, and then they play again, almost 2 months later, you got kind of different teams there.
Mm-hmm.
You have, you have had time to, redo your game plan, and have you've probably put some different stuff in, and it's not just the same game twice, and you're saving you're keeping your powder dry in the first game for the second game. That to me is not that exciting. I don't mind, the Florida State Miami thing. Florida State and Miami always used to play in like week 1. So then if they were going to play again in the conference championship game, those are 2 completely different teams. You've had injuries. You had guys maybe moving up and down the depth charts. You got all that kind of stuff. If it's back-to-back weeks, that's not great to me. I don't mind Ohio State and Michigan playing in the regular season and then a month and a half later in the college football playoff semifinals. I think that would be fantastic. The back-to-back week thing I don't really love, but also they will move the Ohio State-Michigan game off of the last game of the season over my cold, dead body. So also that's not a solution. So, I think Michigan will probably solve the problem by not being very good this year. So I don't think it'll be an issue this year, but we'll see how it is moving forward.
Yeah, I was going to call you and say, hey, are you saying you want the game played in October? And you saw me coming down the road and you're like, no. Yeah, I think the stakes of playing in the Big Ten championship game for that bye and that will raise that game, but it will be interesting to see how the coaches handle that first game. But it's not a game that Ryan Day wants to lose, not a game that Sharon Moore wants to lose. So it's a new situation. We'll see how if it happens, how they handle it, and go from there.
All right, my next one, I'm kind of torn between two things. I think I'm going to go a little off the board here. Not literally off the board. It is on the board. I'm going to go Nick Saban on game day. I think people who just see Nick Saban standing on the sideline and frowning and yelling into his headset and screaming at players, I don't think you have the full picture of Nick Saban, how personable he is, how good he is at explaining things. If you ever watch the Nick Saban coaches show, he'll diagram like a play of the week and he'll just break it down and he'll explain it so simply. And it's like these really complicated, he's explaining, the way they do pattern matching or something like that. And he just breaks it down so simply, so intelligently. And he's so likable when you see him on TV, talking or breaking something like that down. He is going to be so good on College Game Day. He's like, I might start having to watch College Game Day again, good on College Game Day. There will definitely be weeks where we can't do that because we're running around covering a game or whatever. But I think that is going to be one of the biggest upgrades for a show that has been on the glide path of a plane going into the side of a mountain for about the last 10 years. This is going to be one of the biggest upgrades in the history of sports television.
Well, and that was one of the things that set Big Noon Kickoff apart before Urban Meyer left for Jacksonville, is they would do X's and O's, and they had Urban Meyer there talking it out and showing and making it very approachable and easy to understand. And it was something that while they're doing that, Game Day is doing skits or, let's do this thing with let's make Desmond laugh, or let's, see what David Pollack thinks about whatever. And now ESPN can get back to that, doing that with Nick Saban. And I do think there's a lot of moving parts. It's probably a good thing it's a 3-hour show, but when you do have all of the people that they have there, and now you're doing more stunts and things with, what's his face, the kicker,
Pat McAfee.
Pat McAfee, who I don't hate. I used to hate, now I don't. So there's just a lot of moving parts there. And of course, then you've got to still also find some time to, hey, let's talk about football and preview games. Fortunately for ESPN, they no longer have to talk about the Big Ten. They can just focus on the SEC and the ACC. So they'll manage.
They will manage. Yes. The race to become the lowest common denominator on that show in so many areas has been so consistent over the last 10 years. Nick Saban has made every organization he has been around better. I hear you saying Miami Dolphins. Look it up. He did not want to take Dante Culpepper. He wanted to take Drew Brees. It's okay. It's fine. Didn't go great, but that wasn't really on him. But he has made everything that he is around, he makes better. I can't imagine he's going to have that much patience for some of the nonsense that they're going to do. So at least the Nick Saban portions of Game Day are going to be pretty darn good.
My next pick, Tom, is one that you put on the board. So I'm going to take it from you because we're all excited about it. We've already talked about it. We don't need to talk too much about it here. But the EA Sports college football game is on its way back. Will be dropped in July. We saw the trailer recently for that. I know there's still concerns about the gameplay, and is it just going to be Madden, a reskin of Madden? I think most people don't care. in terms of, yeah, they don't want that, but also just go ahead and give it to us and let us just have this thing that we've been without for so long, and we'll deal with it, and we'll complain, but we will eat the food, and we will eat the slop, swallow down the gruel, and then also complain while we're doing it. But uh, take those few days off of work, or if you're getting it early, take the entire week off of work, and be, have played enough of the game within the first day to be able to really, really angrily write your Congress people about what an terrible, terrible thing that you've just done and you've been sold. But I think everybody's happy that it is back. It's been a long time coming. Tom, I would like, with the technological advancements that have been made, and the fact that you can go ahead and like put your own face on some characters, and like the basketball game, you can upload pictures and stuff. I think it is time to be able to upload touchdown celebrations and then just have, the computer do it. You get the AI to do it, because I think the Ole Miss dog peeing celebration, that should be something. There are so many different things you could do. A ton of wrestling type of celebrations, but I think you should be able to, now that we've advanced, it's 2024, let us upload touchdown celebrations in the game, please.
I love the idea of having just, like a microtransaction thing where you can unlock the Ole Miss dog peeing celebration, but only for the Egg Bowl. I could not possibly imagine a better use of microtransactions in that game. If they do that, they have to license the Joe Buck clip of the Randy Moss fake mooning thing from like 20 years ago. That is a disgusting act. That is mandatory. If you're doing that, you have to use that clip. You have to license Joe Buck just for that one clip. I think that would be worth it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm excited about the game as well. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure there will be complaints. I'm sure there will be people who, the people who want to complain about everything will complain about it. People who want to be excited about it will be excited about it. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fun. Looking forward to that one as well. Boy, there are some, just to touch base, are on the board still are 2-minute warning, old college football players in new places, old college football teams in new places, old college football coaches in new places, in-helmet communications, and no SEC games on CBS. We're at the point where, I'm either kind of ambivalent, or there's some good and some bad to all of this. I'm going to go old college football teams in new places. Just because I think the top of the Big Ten and the top of the SEC are going to be so good this year. You add Texas to the SEC, you add Oregon to the Big Ten. It's the novelty of seeing teams play in different places is going to be fun. Ohio State going to Oregon and Michigan hosting USC. I don't know the last time USC went to Michigan Stadium, but you've got all these really cool different matchups that you haven't seen in a long time. That's going to be fun. The tops of the conference, the power of the sport has been consolidated really into those two conferences, which is, this is where it's kind of like, well, that's not really a great thing, because you do want a better coast to coast, everyone in every section of the country is really relevant to the national championship conversation. And I kind of feel like you said earlier, Big 12 country, really you could draw kind of a big circle around the middle of the country, probably starting at about the western border of, I don't know, Indiana, and going down to the Red River and back up around, the west side of the Rocky Mountains. And no one in there is going to be a national championship contender at any point in the foreseeable future. So that's not great. But I think you're also setting up some really, really good, interesting matchups. This kind of ties back in with the no more divisions. Your conference championship games are going to be such good, compelling, exciting games. I think this is going to be, at least for a while, good and entertaining. And, if this was a podcast covering a ACC team or a Big 12 team, this would probably be much lower on the draft board. But, the Big 10 and the SEC are very clearly the haves right now. And so, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're probably okay with that.
Well, I'll push back on the ACC thing, Tom. and I'll give you an 8-day example, starting Friday, November 8th, concluding Saturday, November 16th. And Friday, November 8th, you have California going to Wake Forest. And a week later, they are hosting Syracuse. So don't tell me that you can't find interesting matchups in other conferences. I just gave you two that we have. I'm surprised we haven't talked about them yet, but I know you can probably turn on ESPN News at any given point and they're going to be talking about these two matchups.
I also don't think people have really wrapped their heads around the fact that Cal and Stanford and SMU are now part of the ACC. Why? Because reasons, I don't know. That is definitely the downside. There are some real weird fits, like complete non-cultural fits, just like, well, the lights came up at the bar at 2 a.m. and like, well, I don't know, sure, all right. That's there's stuff that's not going to make sense. That's really not going to be good for anyone involved. That is very high on the list. But yes, Cal and Wake Forest, now a conference game. What a time to be alive.
Tom, I'm going to go old college football players in new places. And for Ohio State fans, this might be a much higher pick because I would just mention, hey, Caleb Downs, now at Ohio State. One of the top safeties in the nation last year at Alabama as a true freshman, transfers to Ohio State at a position of need where you've lost your starting free safety. He is basically the guy that can come in and just glue everything together, the missing piece there, completes the puzzle, if you will. Whatever analogy you want to have, Caleb Downs is probably that guy. And he's just one of the names that are out there in terms of big names at other places. I'm interested to see what Cam Moore does at Miami. A lot of talk about the negotiations there. He's a name. Riley Leonard at Notre Dame, Tom. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm not going to break any news here, but don't be shocked if Bino Cook rises from the dead just to get out there and talk about Riley Leonard. Like, if you are into these ghost hunting shows, don't be surprised if you hear something. If you hear something about this, and Bino Cook has somebody. If there's a ghost talking about Riley Leonard on camera or off camera, more likely, it might be Bino.
It might be Bino. Yes, they had a quarterback they were sure was going to win the Heisman when we were in South Bend last year too. So could they go back to back with former ACC quarterbacks? Look, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Did Sam Hartman win the Heisman? I don't know. I just know there were a bunch of signs at game day. I'm sure it went great after that. This is fine. This is another one where this is great if you're Ohio State, and there are a lot of schools that it is not so great for. Ohio University lost several players, including their multi-year starting quarterback, who they lost to Indiana. This is good for different levels of the sport in different ways. It's probably good for players, broadly speaking. There's some who don't end up go in the portal and don't ever come out. But, I think broadly speaking, it's good for the players, and they get some more leverage in terms of being able to make more in NIL, but also in terms of just being able to be in a better spot. If you were told you were going to be, a starter, or you're, strongly competing for the starting job, and then you get there, it's like, well, actually, no, you can move on and you're not just stuck there. So, I think it, broadly speaking, is probably a good thing in the abstract, but this is another one where a lot like the conference realignment thing. If you're an Ohio State fan, it's great. If you are somewhere down the pecking order, it is not so great in a lot of cases. So, we'll see. It is going to be very confusing to watch games, and I feel like we need to do a show at some point. Just, okay, where is this quarterback playing this year? Because I saw the Jaden Rashada story that we talked about at the top of the show. Anyway, whoa! He's at Georgia now. When did that happen? It is a little hard to keep track of. Let's see. So the last four on the board are the 2-minute warning, old college football coaches in new places, in-helmet communications, no SEC games on CBS. I guess I'll go. We are down to the I'm not that excited about any of these section of the draft. I guess I'm going to go with the old college football coaches in new places. We talked about Nick Saban's new job. already. Nick Saban's old job, boy, I'm real curious how that Kalen DeBoer to Alabama thing is going to work, because I feel like it might not work great, because I think Nick Saban might have been one of the big thing holding everything together at Alabama. I don't know if people remember what Alabama was before Nick Saban got there. I think there's a chance it goes back to what it was before. Not that they're going to lose to ULM or anything like that, but that you're going to have boosters going wild, and you don't have someone who's kind of the man at the top of the top of the organization, really kind of running everything. That's a real big seat to fill. And for years we've said, I would not want to be the guy who replaces Nick Saban, because that's pretty much impossible. The standard there is pretty much impossible to meet. And now you got Georgia on the, that you're going to have to go through in the SEC. And that's a whole separate challenge. I think that's going to be interesting. There are other guys who are, Mike Elko at Texas A&M, sure. Manny Diaz at Duke, Bill O'Brien at Boston College, Jed Fish at Washington, Willie Fritz at Houston, Kurt Signetti at Indiana. I mean, there's fine. I mean, the Sharon Moore thing is really interesting to me, because that was supposed to be a continuity hire. And, you're coming off a national championship. You want to keep everything the way it is. We're just going to hire the internal guy. He did great in 3 games. He only swore and cried on camera once. I'm sure it's going to go great. And then nothing has been continuity basically at all at Michigan since then. And you look at their schedule, I think this year could go rather poorly for them. I'm not saying 6-6, but 9-3, 8-4 would be a pretty substantial step back. And I think those are both reasonably in play. So I'm very curious to see how some of these new hires go.
We've talked in the past about how Ryan Day said his first 5 years or whatever in college as a head coach, there are changes every year. Like, you're dealing with all these crazy changes while also trying to be a head coach for the first time. Sharon Moore is dealing with some crazy things going on right now while trying to be a head coach as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts the program and himself. One name that you didn't throw in there that I'm interested in seeing is Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. A guy that a lot of people really, really liked at Oregon State, thought maybe he would be a lifer there, but when your conference falls apart, you kind of have to jump ship and go somewhere else. And we'll see what he can do at Michigan State. I know a lot of people love him. Brought in Aiden Childs from one of the top quarterbacks in the portal, very unproven, but very talented. I'm interested to see what happens there. So Michigan State, Jonathan Smith being one of those guys. How quickly does he hit a home run right off the bat? And what does that mean? Is that 8-4? I don't know what that means for Michigan State. Just competence would be an upgrade, I guess. Tom, I'm going to go. This one doesn't impact you necessarily. It impacts you a little bit. Impacts me greatly up in the press box. 2-minute warning in the first half and the fourth quarter. Mainly the first half, and Tom, I'll tell you why this impacts me, is because hot dogs are coming out. The halftime food is coming out. You don't want to be like, if you wait until halftime, then you're 30 people deep. With this 2-minute warning, this will give me an opportunity to beat the line and get back in time before the play even starts. So I think this is a fantastic move. I'm not saying they did it for me, but I'm saying I will utilize it. I will make the most of it as much as I can. And thank you. Thank you all very much.
I frankly can't believe this wasn't your first pick. I thought the real possibility that this is going to go real high. I'm a little surprised it didn't. I'm not sure they did it specifically for you unless you were a TV network looking to sell more pickup trucks. If you are, congratulations. You're probably going to make a bunch of money this year selling pickup trucks during college football games. This is it's an extra chance to stop the clock. This is, when they made the clock rules to shorten the games and fewer plays and all that kind of stuff, and not have 4-hour game times, all that kind of stuff. They changed the clock rules and they're shaving a couple minutes off here and there, and then you're giving it all back now because you're adding it, time wise, not in terms of number of plays. There will still be less football. It will take just as long as it did before because they have to sell more beer and pickup trucks during the 2-minute warning in each half. It's going to be good in that it potentially allows you to be a little more aggressive. You're going to potentially be going for it more and not just trying to sit on it at the end of the half or at the end of the game.
Are you talking about
in a
me?
tie game. No, well, you're going to be more aggressive on the buffet line. Coaches potentially can be a little more aggressive in terms of, we've got the ball at our 25. We only have 2 timeouts left. Do we want to go for it? Well, now you have 3 timeouts because you got the 2-minute warning. So that could change some of the game decisions there. All right, let's see. Well, speaking of things that Sherrone Moore is going to have to deal with during his first year, I guess we can talk about in-helmet communications. This is one of these things that I think this time last year, everyone would kind of go, sure, you could do that. I don't know why. And now everyone knows why you're going to do it. And so, how much is it going to impact things on the field? It's going to change how some teams, maybe are scouting other teams. I don't know. We'll see how it actually plays out. Because this spring, it was kind of, they did it and it was okay. And they were sort of figuring stuff out, but they were only allowed to have 3 helmets at a practice with the radio in them. So they really were kind of, the defense had it one day, the offense had it the other day. And, 3 of the 5 quarterbacks at Ohio State had the helmet radios in and the other one didn't. So they're still figuring a lot of this stuff out in terms of what it's going to look like on the field. But this could be a significant change for certain teams.
The learning aspect of it in the spring, talking with players and hearing players talk about it, like I think Cody Simon, when he was talking about early this spring, was like, yeah, it was really loud. It's like, you got to tell Jim Knowles to turn it down. And so just that aspect of it, like the logistical aspect of like, hey, can we have the volume at a 4? 7 is too much. Let's keep it down. That, or, when Lincoln Keenholz was talking about how his helmet was on and he was trying to be able to talk to Ryan Day or whatever while he's not even taking reps, and he had to turn his helmet off, and just trying to figure those things out. It's a good thing that you had spring to do that for, and I understand why they didn't want to do it during the bowl practice, because you're trying to win a game. You're not trying to figure out, okay, this is too loud, this is too much. There's too much crackling. We need better service. So I do wonder if this leads to more huddling. There's been speculation of that. So we'll see how it works there. Tom, no SEC games on CBS is going to go undrafted. You're going to have to sign a free agent deal. So maybe come out for a tryout. So congratulations to them. We'll have to make do with watching the Big Ten on CBS at 3:30. And Vern Lundquist is retired anyway, right? So,
He is. I'm wondering how Gary Danielson's views on the SEC vis-a-vis the Big Ten will have changed over the course of this offseason. It's impossible to say, but I suspect they may have changed, which will be so fascinating to watch and to listen to.
Yeah, and we'll start to get more. I think a few more updates on TV times, kick times. Fox is going to be announcing their Friday night schedule coming up this week. Don't expect any Ohio State games there, but I am interested to see what that looks like Friday nights. Hopefully some good games to watch, Tom, because that's something we're always looking for in the hotel, wherever we are Friday night on the road. Like, who's playing this week? It's like, oh, it's San Jose State and UCLA. It's like they play every week, even during the conference season. Yes, every week.
Yeah, Cal and Stanford in the ACC, San Jose State now apparently in the Big Ten. I don't know how it happened. I missed a memo. But you will have some great Spartans on Spartans action if they can ever stop playing UCLA. So that'll be fun. And I am planning on having Matt Sars on the morning show a little later on this week. We have a day set up. We're actually waiting until after the Friday Big Ten games are announced, or the Friday Fox games are announced. So, but we're going to be able to take a dive into some of the TV scheduling. There was a trade. We found out this week there was a trade between Fox and another network, where Fox gave up the 3rd pick in the draft and traded down like an NFL team would to get 2 different weeks later in the season, later in the draft. So, going to talk through a bunch of that stuff with him. But this is, you start going through the weeks. Like, I feel like I've probably been a little bit of a downer on this show, and I don't mean to be. There's a lot of exciting stuff here. There's always, there's a little bit of like, well, this is good for this reason and bad for this, for that reason. You want to get excited for the season, just start going through, like, do the little exercise where you try and figure out who's going to pick which games. And you look every week and there are just bangers on the schedule just about every week. That is going to be fantastic. Oregon at Ohio State at Oregon, and Ohio State at Penn State is the same week as Michigan hosting Oregon. I mean, there's some great weeks.
Yeah, and I think that was that went with the fourth pick, if we do the math correctly on that one. So check that out on eventually on Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning. Of course, you can find the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast on all of your podcast platforms of choice, and also youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, which is where you can also find this one, and you may be currently finding it right now. And if you are, how about a thumbs up? We would appreciate it. So that will do it for us. A reminder to check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Now is a fantastic time to become a member. Take advantage of that spring sale while it lasts. It will not be sticking around much longer, so go do that today. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.